Let's do it now. He's the ají to my empanada. He's the arroz to my frijole. He is the club to my Colombia. The one and only Danny Segura is here.
Yo, what's good, man?
What's up, Mr. Segura?
All good, dude.
Great job this week with the coverage. You did. Folks who may not know, that was Danny's work.
Yeah.
Learned a little hard lesson about white balance, but other than that,
I did. I learned a lot, man.
But folks don't. I don't want to even get into it. But for folks who don't know, trust me when I tell you that you could not have asked for more from him, and you did a great job. I thought.
Yeah. I mean, one man army, but got the job done. Overall, pretty happy with the coverage we provided this weekend. Good job also on the pre and post fight show.
Yeah, I did do a good job, didn't I?
Yeah, always.
All right, we don't have a moment to waste. I didn't even ask you about this. How were the calls?
The calls were good, man. They were good.
All right, not as good as before.
Not as good as before, but nonetheless, still pretty good.
All right.
I think it's the cold, man, slowing people down.
It's a holiday today. We're out here thugging it.
That's true. We out here grinding.
All right, let me know.
All right, let's get this started. Well, it was the first show on ESPN, so I was very busy working in the back, but I know you had the broadcast up, so I'm curious to get your thoughts on.
Correct,
this.
I did have the broadcast up. Yep.
Hey, Luke. Hey, Danny. Big fans of the show. This is Mike calling from Deerfield Beach, Florida. I just wanted to ask, what do you give, the first show on ESPN's overall grade, based off the flow, based off of, performances, commentating? I truly like Trevor Whitman being added as the coach factor. I like that. I enjoyed that. Kind of had the pay-per-view-esque feel, mix it a little bit of the old Fox. I kind of see what they did there with just swapping out the name. Production does well, but I kind of expected a little bit more. I did like the intro. I kind of wish they would lean more towards that type of flow. But I just wanted to ask, overall, what did you give UFC Brooklyn Grade? I appreciate you guys. Thank you again. All love from South Florida.
All right. South Florida represent.
Shouts out to South Florida.
I mean, there's nothing else to do but call the show, so I appreciate that.
There's the beach.
How cold is it?
There's good Cuban food.
Hold on. What is the weather?
It's like, so my parents are like, they texted me this morning. He's like, it's so cold. And I'm like, it's 66. Like, that's like literally like 60 degrees more.
Yeah. It's 1/10 the temperature here.
Yeah.
Okay. What did I give it? I would give it a pretty high grade. I made this point on the post-fight show, Danny, which was they learned a lot from that first Fox show where they had the one fight and it ended quickly. Can you imagine if they'd done the one fight this time? It would have been half the length of JDS versus Kane 1. They didn't want to do that. They had a much better presentation. They had I thought, a pretty good card, to be honest with you. Some people were belly aching about it. I liked it. But here's what I think I would say the most. I was talking to my buddy RJ Clifford, who works at Fox, and I was saying the UFC just kind of took their production elements. They stripped the Fox logo and put an ESPN thing on there. He's like, well, yeah, that's because that's because UFC still does the production. Yeah. Right, what does that have to do with anything? I get that there's continuity, but I would have thought that the occasion of being on ESPN would have prompted them to do more than create just a couple of different graphics packages. But apparently not. So I would give that a low grade. Whitman, they still haven't quite figured out how to use, but he was already kind of awesome. That's sort of where I come down on this.
Yeah. Well, I was working a lot in the back, so I wasn't really paying too much attention. Sometimes you miss a little bit of the action. And also, they had a broadcast up, which wasn't the same thing we were looking at on the ESPN Plus, right?
It's slightly different.
Slightly different, yeah. But I did like the Trevor Whitman. I think they still have things to figure out. I feel like he was a little too quiet sometimes.
Yeah.
But when he did speak, he gave great insight and did add to the broadcast, which, I thought that was great. And, as I told you, I think it was on last episode of the MMA Hour, like, they need to make the UFC consumption as easy as possible, right? Because I feel like all these other sports that are on ESPN are fairly easy to consume. The rules are straightforward, and they do a pretty good job at explaining everything. With MMA, it's like a little harder, a little trickier. So having definitely a coach in there that can break down what's going on in between rounds it's a good thing.
Here's my one complaint beyond this: the ESPN Plus interface is garbage. It is not user friendly.
It's clunky.
It's clunky. It's mixed. It's like, here's the prelims in Espanol. Here's the prelims in English. Here are the post limbs. It's just this glut of content, ineffectively organized.
Yeah.
The user interface, if anyone from ESPN is watching this, I love the fact that it's $5 a month. I'm a customer. I will be a customer as long as you guys keep offering value. And I believe that they will get it right. But as I speak today on the show, ESPN Plus, your interface is straight basura. Please work on that.
It's also a brand new platform, so I'm sure they'll be fixing it.
Of course,
and
it's going to get better with time, I'm sure.
Yeah, same with UFC Fight Pass. I think when it first rolled out, it wasn't like
it was terrible,
the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And they finally got down. So let's get right into it. The stoppage was probably the biggest talk point leaving that fight.
Okay.
So let's talk about that.
Yep.
Hi, this is Russ from York, England. Big fan of the show. My question is this. Dana White said after the main event, you've got two champions in a super fight. Let them fight. Let them finish. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this. Should there be a meritocracy in how long a fighter is allowed to continue? I appreciate some fights are more significant than others, but surely all fighters should be able to fight until they're deemed unable to continue. Thank you.
Right. Do you have a problem with the stoppage? Now having some time to reflect on it?
You know, I went back last night and saw it again, and I do think it was a bit early, but I didn't think it was criminally early. Like, I didn't think TJ got robbed. Like, it was clear that TJ was hurt. He was wobbling, and I think since the initial touch, I think it was like 12 seconds it goes that Cejudo's attacking him. And I think, 12 seconds might not sound like a lot, but if you're just counting 1, 2, 3, that's yeah. And the whole time I know TJ was saying like, hey, I was going for that single, but he was going for the single for 12 seconds and he couldn't get it. And man, you really think you're going to take down Cejudo too? Maybe. I'm not saying he won't be able to, but it is a tough ask.
It is a very tough ask, especially when you've been rocked.
Yes. So I think if they would have let the fight, I wouldn't hate if they would have let the fight go on longer. I think in these championship fights, and when there's so much at stake, I think it's okay for fighters to take a little bit of a beating. You don't want to take, not like the Dan Hooker scenario where you got somebody that's so young, right? There's really nothing at stake. You're already losing a lot. A lot of the fight, just call it. In this case, let the fight go on a little bit. But I didn't think it was the worst stoppage in the world.
So I went back and I watched the Cerrone and Hernandez stoppage. Hernandez was wrestling when they stopped it too. Now, how thoroughly he was wrestling, not very. He was hurt, obviously.
Right.
But this idea that, like, oh, he was still wrestling, therefore that's intelligent defense. Well, sort of. Like, yes, if he was just laying there, well, that would be terrible. But that you're moving is not necessarily enough. It has to be really kind of coordinated and effective, that you're reaching is not all that much. Look, could he have probably let it go a little longer? I think that much is incontestable. Yeah, he could have let it go a little bit longer, and I don't think it would have been the end of the world. But this idea that it's some kind of egregious stoppage, that this is some kind of, I don't know what the worst stoppage is off the top of my head, but it's like uniformly bad. No, I know Dana White got out there and said this was a terrible stoppage. He also said he thought Greg Hardy looked amazing. And like, oh, he can definitely fight. I was like, that was not the lesson I took from this. I mean,
I don't know about that.
Maybe in the future he will. I'm not writing him off.
Right.
But I didn't look at that performance as particularly inspiring. So there's a lot of times you get these media narratives that begin to carry their own weight. Sorry. Was it an A+ stoppage? No. Probably C+, B-, somewhere in there. But that's a passing grade.
Yeah, for sure. I would say like in the scale of okay and bad, it's a few degrees on the okay side.
Yeah.
But, I don't think it was the worst thing in the world.
No, it's not. It's just a totally made-up phenomenon that I don't buy at all. Sorry.
Yeah. All right, now this next caller asked two questions in one. So obviously pertaining TJ and Cejudo and a couple other guys.
All right.
What's going on? What's going on, guys? It's Ricardo from Toronto. I just wanted to get you guys' opinion on the aftermath of TJ Dillashaw and Henry Cejudo. I personally think he's going to get that rematch at 125 pounds because he made a pretty strong case for it in the post-fight press conference. And I think it's just the fight to make. And also, Cowboy and Conor seems like it's very possible now. But does that really hold any value other than just pure entertainment? I don't think it really does much for the division. But it's an entertaining fight. But just want to get your opinion on that as well. Thanks, guys.
All right, so let's talk about TJ Cejudo first. What happens from here?
God, I don't know. TJ, I spoke to him about what he was going to do after this fight, and he was like, "There's no one for me to fight at bantamweight because Assunção and Moraes are going to be fighting first, and that needs to happen before a clear number one contender. Maybe it would have been Cruz, but obviously he's on ice too. So it's like, who's he going to fight? So he's definitely going to either look for the Cejudo rematch at 135, or he's going to try to go to 125. I think that's probably going to win out over Joseph Benavidez. Frankly, Benavidez has a win over Cejudo. That's a much more compelling rematch to me than anything else, but I don't know if that's the space that we're in at this point. So I guess it'll happen at either weight class. Just I don't know which one. That one I don't have a strong read on. Do you?
You know, it's such a bizarre situation. I think they might run it again at 125, but this whole idea that there's no contenders, well, is because you're not defending your belt against the real contenders, right? Like you're getting the immediate rematch with Cody Garbrandt, now dropping down to Cejudo. So those guys got to pick up fights. And a Sunsaw, that's just in a couple weeks. That's at the beginning of February. So just wait for that. And something the UFC has been, I feel like, dropping the ball recently is in the rivalries. For example, the TJ Cody rivalry, that was a great one. But because they ran it back to back, they sort of killed it and ended the life kind of short. Let these guys defend both of the belts and see what happens.
Yeah, you got to let it simmer.
Exactly. Let it cook. Let it brew. And
stay cooking, fam.
Yeah, bro. I don't like this whole immediate rematch thing unless it's like something insane.
It also doesn't. It also ruins the fights themselves because the guys don't have enough time to really develop their skill sets.
Exactly.
And make adjustments. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm all for keeping these guys away from each other. I think there are enough fights for both Cejudo and TJ Dillashaw at their own weight classes to stay entertained for a little bit and run it back. Sometime later this year.
Okay.
That's what I'm feeling. Then the second part was Cerrone Conor. Are you in?
Yeah, I mean, I think this all depends on Conor and what kind of space he's in. I said this before on my own YouTube channel. People got all bitter about it, but I don't really know why. Look, if he's really ready to commit and is training to commit to getting back into championship contention, then let's give him the latitude to do that. But I have a strong suspicion that that's not the case, and if it's not, then why do I care if he's going to fight Tony Ferguson at some point? Let the guys who are Tony Ferguson does nothing but get up, eat glass, train, take care of his family, and go to bed. You understand? Put that guy in the titleship contender, queue. What about Dustin Poirier? Boy, he's out here grinding, never out of the gym. Put that guy in the championship queue. But if you're not going to be doing that, and I'm not judging you for it, you got kids, a whiskey business, do what you want to do, man. Life is short. But if that's not the space you're in, yeah, sure, have him fight Cerrone. I said before, fucking have him fight Paulie Malignaggi. I don't care.
Yeah. Plus, he needs a tune-up fight, and Cerrone, he needs a big fight.
Yeah.
He needs a big paycheck. I'm all in for that
fight.
I'm
good. I have no problem with it.
And Cerrone's already down to fight in Ireland. He's down wherever. So
come on, he'll fight in the proper 12, manufacturing plant.
Distillery. Yeah. So that should be fun. But I'm all for it. Also, Al Quinto was kind of campaigning for that, but I like the Cerrone one better.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest.
Yeah. I guess so. Yeah.
Cool. Now let's talk a little bit about Cejudo, and then we move on to other topics.
All right.
Hey, Luke and Danny. This is Ben from College Station. Love the show.
Where the hell is College Station?
It seems with every single fight, Henry Cejudo keeps, since dropping 2 to Demetrius Johnson and Joseph Benavidez, Henry Cejudo has looked exponentially better between each fight. So I was just wondering what the upper limit would be, or I guess the ceiling would be for Henry Cejudo. Thanks, and keep up the good work.
Apparently, College Station is where they have Texas A&M University. Yo, my bad for not knowing the city where an agrarian college is. Pissing off everybody in College Station, Texas. Sorry, what did he ask? I wasn't even listening. I was so focused on that.
What's the ceiling on Cejudo? I mean,
God, that's such a good
DJ,
question.
And now he beat TJ.
Dude, I'm telling you, go back and you watch the tape. Don't even bother looking at the tape until the Hayes fight, because it's just a completely different guy after that. So to me, it's like, how much better can he get? Well, I don't know. I need to see more than 34 seconds every time he comes out here. And if he's dramatically different from the 5 rounds to the 34 seconds, the answer is maybe a lot, maybe not a lot. But here's what I do know: he's already made massive gains. If he can get better than he is already, I was talking about this with Eric. They were going to make a DJ versus TJ super fight, and then Cejudo beats both of them. Are you kidding me, man? So I don't know the answer to that, because I don't think we can draw that conclusion. I need to see more tape, but I can say he has made a fundamental, clear, and massive transformation.
Yeah, he's 31, which we know that's a little bit older for the lighter weight classes. But in MMA years, he feels super young. He feels like he's just hitting his peak, his prime. So,
and physically, he's changing too.
Yeah,
which is a bit of another X factor, which can bring his game to life.
Yeah, for sure. Dude, I think he could be one of the greatest. I mean, we'll see what happens at 125. I feel like maybe if they do get rid of 125, I feel like that could low-key kind of be good for him, because, I mean, once you beat DJ at 125, any other fight, sure, there's the Benavidez one you can get back, but after that, there's depending on what happens, you can rack up wins and build your legacy. But man, going up to 135 also says something.
See, I feel like a little bit different. I feel like if he goes to 135, that could shorten things a little bit for him, because it's still not clear how much that cut hurt TJ. I mean, maybe a little bit,
That's
maybe a
true.
lot. We don't
Yeah.
know, but it's at least worth considering. And where is he going to be best? He's going to be best at 125. You're not going to get the best
Yeah.
of him at 135. So
Well,
it's better promotionally, but it might be worse for his record.
if you're trying to be pound for pound, let's say, like, that's obviously keeping in mind and assuming that he does well at 135. Like if you're the last champion at 125 and then you go up to 135 and you kill it there and you're like, hey, look, this is not even my weight class and I'm destroying these guys out here.
Big if though.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah. All right. Gregor Gillespie. Let's talk about him.
All right.
Hey, Luke, this is Chuck in your favorite city of Dallas, Texas.
Ugh.
My question is,
Worst
do
city
you
in
think
America.
Gregor Gillespie is a legitimate contender at 155? I personally think that he is a tough matchup for any of the top contenders right now. Thanks.
Dude, he's such a unique character.
Yeah.
He showed me in the back after he did his scrum, he was eating bananas like a true primate, and I say that in a very complimentary way. He's back there eating bananas, and I'm like, oh my God. And he showed me how he cut his hair. He literally he grows it out on like one side forever. And then right before the fight, he just takes it and throws it in front of his forehead and then just goes straight across with scissors. The dude's a madman. He's totally his own guy. The fishing thing is weird, but in a good way. Like, he's weird. He's totally weird, but in a very good way, not in a bad way. Highly unusual. He goes, he creeps back into the swamp between fights. You never hear from him. And then he comes back out here and just rolls on these guys. He's got unending cardio. He has elite wrestling. He has very good grappling. Striking, I don't know, because it's not fully on display. Dude, he is going to beat people. He is going to beat people. I think very highly of Gregor Gillespie.
Dude, he's so skilled. It kind of sucks, I guess, from a media perspective that he's not out there like
I know
calling these guys out, because you're like, man, you could be going so much farther. But I respect him for sticking to his what he believes in, I guess, and his morals. But yeah, man, I mean, he just keeps racking up wins. You're gonna get to the top at some point. So I wonder what's next for him. See, this is why I don't like the Stephen Wonderboy Thompson versus Anthony Pettis. He could have been fighting Anthony Pettis. See, and it would have served something to the division, right?
Pettis fighting another wrestler? I mean, what is that going to do for him?
I mean, who, to Pettis or Gillespie?
Well, Gillespie would be great. For
Yeah.
Pettis, it does nothing.
That's right, but I mean, fighting at 170, I don't know.
Again, I recognize that one has some real downside, but I think it's slightly overstated.
So yeah, we'll see what next for him. Is there anyone specifically you'd like to see him match up with?
Anyone top 10.
Yeah.
Anyone top 10.
Yeah, I agree. I don't feel really strongly about like any specific fighter out there. All right, let's talk about weight classes.
Hey guys, Josh from Windsor, Ontario calling again. This question I've been wondering, always wondered, obviously it's very hard to get into the UFC. It's very hard to climb the ranks in the UFC. But if you were to pick two divisions, one being the easiest to get into, one being the hardest to get into, and to be able to climb your way up, which one do you think it would be?
Oh, that's
All
easy.
right, thanks a lot, guys.
Easiest is going to be light heavy or heavy on the men's side. Hardest is probably going to be lightweight or welter. And then on the women's side, I would say easiest are going to be 145, I suppose. Maybe 125 because it's still newish. Hardest is going to be 115. These are easy questions to answer.
Yeah, for sure. No, I agree with that. I mean, women's featherweight, literally, you can join the UFC and get an immediate title shot. So
it's not that hard.
yeah. Also, I feel like heavyweight is probably the easiest one for men's.
For sure.
Yeah.
Light heavy has some issues, but again, the guys at the top of that are very talented. So.
Yeah. All right. So about Valentina Shevchenko.
Really?
And yeah.
All right.
This was a pretty good question. This was actually left over from last week.
Okay.
Yo, this is Johnny from Memphis State University, and I just got to know, does Shevchenko set the record for women's title defenses? If not, what's the over-under on that? Personally, I think she at least ties it. Let me know, boys.
So how many does Rousey have?
Who?
Title defenses. He's talking about female title defenses? Or
Yeah.
So how many does Rousey have?
I think it was like 8 or 9.
That many? I don't think it's that many.
No? Or 6 might have been.
Something like that. Can she match that? Probably. Yeah. She never gets injured. She's always prepared. But I have a feeling that they're going to find a way to make her go back up to 135 at some point, even for a super fight. So she may lose in there, although that wouldn't be a title defense issue. But like, if she's not going to match it, I'd be very surprised. Very, very surprised. I guess we'll have to see, if a Tatiana Suarez, who I know is not in that weight class, but if she goes up, that could present some interesting challenges. Or a Jessica Andrade, who I know is not in that weight class. But I'm saying if some of these, Andrade fought a 135 for crying out loud.
Yeah, that's true.
So at 125, she could still be a powerhouse. So we'll see. But she is definitely a contender for being able to do that.
I think so. I mean, and also, like, she's so dominant, and at that weight class, I still have yet to see, and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to throw shade to the other flyweights, but I've still have yet to see somebody that can pose a threat to her. Like, it's probably going to be somebody bigger like Amanda at 135. I don't think at 125 we're going to see a real threat anytime soon.
No.
I think.
Anything else?
I mean, we got a few things left over from last week. Thoughts on UFC 234? Maybe what's next for Kane if he wins? I don't know if you want to tackle any of those.
Skip 234. You got one on Kane. You got anything else besides that?
Askren and Woodley not wanting to fight each other.
No, let's go Kane.
Okay, let's do Kane.
Hi, Luke and Danny. Chris here from the UK. With Kane back, what do you think happens should he win his match against Francis Ngannou, and if DC wins his title defence, especially if it's against Stipe? DC obviously moved down to light heavyweight to avoid the two of them having to fight. I appreciate that there are a few ifs and buts, one of course being John Jones possibly fighting DC at heavyweight. Does Kane just wait for DC to retire before going for the title? Would love to know your thoughts. Cheers.
Yeah, there's no way they're fighting.
Yeah, that's...
It's not going to happen. I was talking to Javier Mendez about this not too long ago. Not off the record, but we were just, it wasn't for an interview or something.
Yeah.
And I made a point, man. Like, do you understand what AKA has done? AKA let a guy like Luke Rockhold go and fight somewhere else but maintain affiliation. And I know the things with Koscheck didn't work out.
Right.
But generally speaking, to allow guys like Khabib to come and go, to Rockhold to remain affiliated, and for Kane to take a backseat to DC, DC to take a backseat to Kane, to manage all of this and then still be able to say as a gym in the modern era, you had a middleweight, light heavyweight, two different heavyweight, and then a lightweight champion.
Yeah.
So lightweight, middleweight, light heavy, and then two different heavies. Dude, that is insane. That is an absolutely sterling record of achievement, not merely because you trained good fighters and you recruited good fighters, but you managed personalities and competing professional interests in the same weight class at the same time.
Yeah.
That's unheard of. It's unheard of. The idea that those guys would then jeopardize that and throw all that away because, well, we're just stuck with no one else to fight. They'll fucking retire before they fight each other. It'll never happen.
Yeah, it feels like they have a really close team, whereas other teams that are bigger, there's like teams within teams, Not AKA. AKA, they're one solid pack. But yeah, it's interesting. Like, I think Kane already has a position where, like, if he wins, he's probably gonna get an immediate title shot. He was just gonna. I mean, he's already sat out for like a while. I think he's just gonna wait to see what happens with Cormier, and then once that's settled, he'll go for the belt.